Okay, I want to get you guys up to date on what I have discovered in regards to the Mercedes 320. So, this is the Coachbuilt bodied 1940 Mercedes Cabriolet that we've been working on here in the lab for quite some time. And I'm sure you've all seen the videos, including other videos like this on what we're discovering about the history of the car, because it really truly is a mystery. I mean, we've found some great information. In fact, I'm really blown away with the progress that we've made in chasing the story of this car. But there's still some big gaps that I'm trying to figure out. So here's the hit points of what we've learned so far. So Mercedes has documented that it rolled off the Mannheim assembly line March 15th, 1940, destined for Berlin. We know it left the factory as a long wheelbase Pullman limousine. Okay, we know that to be true. Still has the original engine in it. We checked the numbers on that. All of that's great. Now, when the car came out of the barn, we noticed the tag on the cowl says Romich. Now, Romich is a coach builder in Berlin that I'm very familiar with. In fact, I've had two other Romich cars in this very garage in the past, which is really a bizarre coincidence. And we have proof that it came from Romich in 1948. We have an original photo of the car parked in front of the Romich workshop. It's dated 1948. This came from a viewer in Brazil, of all places, that somehow had a copy of this photo. So we know that the designer of the car was a gentleman by the name of Johannes Beskow. So he is best known for his work with Romich in the Volkswagen-based cars. He also is known for working with a company called Erdmann and Rossi and coming up with some really spectacular design vehicles during the 30s periods. And some of those are some of the most spectacular cars in the world. So we know he was involved with it. And proof of that has come in a couple of different forms. So probably the biggest, craziest lead that we found was through a viewer of the YouTube channel here that had seen a thesis submitted to a Berlin Technical Institute on coach building by a professor there at the school that had interviewed Johannes Beskow on the history of coach building and his history in automotive design. And in that report, there was a list of photos of the most important cars in his career. And in that list, the Mercedes 320 is mentioned, and it's marked as the last. It's dated 1948. Right above it was a Maybach coupe that was also marked as the last. And we know that those were done in 1948. And then from that point forward, he did the things that are normally attributed to his work at Romich. So there's a weird gap there. He finished working at Erdmann and Rossi when basically they were bombed out and closed down during World War II. We know through Romich archives and history and that sort of thing that he really didn't join that firm until 1949. Well, this car was done in 1948 and has the Romich tag. So I'm trying to figure all of this out. Erdmann and Rossi has no records of the car in their archives. So there's a little weird gap there, even though they admit it's definitely evocative of the work that was done at Erdmann and Rossi. And just recently, the big nugget that has come through is that we figured out where Beskow was working in between a period of working for Erdmann and Rossi and working for Romich. So let me tell you the quick story of that. I was in contact with a gentleman that runs a magazine over in Europe that's called Rare and Unique Autos. And it's a phenomenal magazine. I came across it recently. It absolutely blew me away. If you're into really weird, super rare, cool stuff, it's a magazine that you should definitely check out. And I was talking with him about doing an article on the Mercedes and also perhaps doing an article on Johannes Beskow's history, because he's done a lot of cool stuff and there hasn't been a whole lot written about him. And he loved the idea. He said, definitely put more information together. Maybe we can get an article together, and that may happen down the road. But he suggested that I talk to a gentleman that he's worked with before that actually used to run the Deutsches Museum in Germany. Now, this guy is an automotive historian par excellence. And when I contacted him, told him what was going on so far, he popped up quickly with notes that he took interviewing Johannes Beskow in 1976. And during that, there was some mention of the Mercedes again. So we know that it was his work. Now, what's really kind of interesting is in these notes, it was marked that he was working for a Berlin metal company called Freund at the time. So I did a little research on this company, and I believe the company in some form still kind of exists today, although they were bought out in recent years by a much larger company. But I came across a company called Freund that made cans and things like that in more modern day. And I think they are possibly the same company that Beskow was working for in Berlin during the 1940s, obviously doing other metal things. But I haven't found a whole lot of info on the company themselves and what they produced. They might have been a scrap metal place. I don't know. The notes that this guy came up with said that something to the effect of this car coming in there. So did it come in there as a project for him to work on, or did it come in there bombed out as something from the war? I don't know. But what I do know, if his notes are correct, is that during that period, Beskow worked for this company, Freund. So it's very possible that he started the project there and then completed it at Romich, perhaps bringing this in, going, here, this will be the first job I'll bring in here. Give me a job. And after that was done, that happened. So still a little mystery there of what went on, but I think I've established through those notes that the car was not started at Erdmann and Rossi, or at least there's no record of it being started there, but it may have been started at this company called Freund. So what is it? I mean, obviously it's got a Romich tag on it, so you could call it the Romich Mercedes, although the Romich people don't necessarily say that it was all of their work. Erdmann Rossi says it definitely looks like an Erdmann and Rossi design, but they don't have record of it, so they can't call it an Erdmann and Rossi thing. I think it's safe to call it a Romich, but I think more importantly, it should be called by the designer's name. So I'm calling this the Beskow Mercedes, because I think it fits, regardless of who he was working for or what building he was in at the time. This was a design that came from his mind and hand and was made into an automobile. So the history is still a mystery. The things that I'm after or most want to see are names. I want to know who this car was built for. I just, whether it was built from the factory, I'd love to find out that information. But really, more importantly, I'd like to find out who he did this work for in 1948. Who was cruising through the town of Berlin in 1948 in this sexy red convertible. I mean, Berlin was a mess in 1948. There were still rubble. They were picking up from a horrific war. And here comes this flashy red convertible. So it had to be somebody special. It had to be somebody of note. It had to be somebody that had the balls and cash enough to be flashy with a red cabriolet like this. So anyway, that's the quick update. It's probably not a real exciting one, but it's a good one for me to go back to keep track of all of this stuff so I can see the progression of what I've learned and where it goes from there. So, all right, if you have any information on this company, Freund, definitely let me know. If you have any possible contacts that might lead us to the name of a previous owner of this car there in Germany, this would have been 1948 through the early 50s. We know that the car came over to the U.S. probably in the mid to late 50s. So there's a period of ownership there that somebody must know. There must be some photos and information there in regards to that. That still remains to be seen. I think we're tracking down the path of its design and construction pretty well. And we're definitely making strong progress in getting the car up and running and driving again. So anyway, I hope you followed along with all of that. I just wanted to share while I had a chance. Thanks for watching, everybody. Keep on digging them up and driving them. Bye-bye.